And this is a very important election cycle because we are swimming against the tides of history, as you all know, right? Typically the party in power loses seats in the House and the Senate in midterm elections. Just kind of the natural check and balance in our system. So we're trying to change that dynamic in the cycle. And we actually have a president that if anybody can do it, it is President Trump to be able to break that historic cycle. We also have some things we can talk about that will help us do this and actually give us a chance to break this as well. Conservative leadership matters. Conservative leadership delivers. We saw with the last administration, when you didn't have that, you had an undefended border, and millions of people tried to get into our country illegally. You had reckless spending that drove inflation up over 20%. Those were the two big things that cost Joe Biden, or now Kamala Harris, however you want to think about it, the second term. And that's what cost Democrats their control. Now, to keep control of the House and the Senate, what we have passed is the One Big Beautiful Bill. And I know it has been much maligned in the press and by the Democrats, but I gotta tell you folks, I could spend the next hour talking about all the great things in this bill. Now, since you're all like Washington insiders here, I'm not gonna go into the details because you know how this is gonna be great for families, great for businesses. It's gonna spur investment in our country and growth. And what I think is gonna happen next quarter is people are going to start filling out their tax returns, and they're going to get big refunds. They're going to see less money taken out of their checks and withholding. And so they're going to see they're keeping more of their money, and Republicans did that for them. I believe the president's going to try and wrap up a lot of these trade deals like he just did in Asia. So there's less, chaos or confusion or whatever you want to call it about what the tariffs are going to be. I think those are all going to get settled down. And so we're going to have more stability going into next year. And as we do that, and the effects of having a more stable environment and having all this money coming back to our American families, you're going to see that growth, and that we'll be rewarded for that in the midterm elections. That's the plan. Now, as with any plan, you've got a lot of work to do to go into that. So we've kind of set, good policy making, good politics part. Now we actually have to deliver on the rest, right? So with One Big Beautiful Bill, what President Trump has done, he's brought those illegal border crossings down to 95% or something like that of what they used to be. I mean, the chart out is really dramatic, right? So we're getting the border secure. With One Big Beautiful, we're investing in defense to be able to deter communist China. Keeping people safe is part of what government's supposed to be doing. And what I think you're going to see is with the president's policies, pro-growth policies of cutting red tape, the tariffs, all the things that are pro-business in the One Big Beautiful Bill, I expect that as I've actually seen some analyst reports that are looking at our deficit for this year, it's going to be down 20 to 25%. So that's progress, right? Going in the right direction versus what Biden did, which was spend like drunken sinners and run up the deficit. So we're seeing that fiscal control coming back in place too. So all those things I think are going to help us be able to make the case to the American people why we should be rewarded with keeping the House and the Senate. But we got to get that message out, and that's why Tim Scott has selected vice chairs such as myself and people like Katie Britt, Bernie Moreno, Marsha Blackburn, to be able to help him raise money. This will be a historically expensive midterm election. North Carolina alone will cost $600 to $800 million, both sides. Total. Yeah, it's a lot of money. I was talking to Michael Watley. He himself thinks he needs to raise like $50 million, just in hard money. And that's just now. But obviously it's subject to change as we get into next year. That's a lot of money. We've got 22 races, 22 seats that we're defending as Republicans. Important seats too, like Maine, and as I just mentioned, Michael Watley, North Carolina. So we've got a lot of work just to defend our incumbents. Schumer has said that Maine is his #1 target. Now, I gotta tell you, I like Susan Collins' chances up there. She is one very savvy politician. And there's a fight going on in Maine. If you look at the name of the communist up there, I can't remember, and then the governor, the Democrats are going to have a tough primary. And that's going to drain some of their resources and beat up both their candidates before they go into the general election. And Susan Collins, again, is a very, very good politician. So she is really, really good. So I like our chances up there. Michael Watley understands this process. I like our chances in holding North Carolina. And then we have the opportunity for pickup seats. Chairman Scott has said it's not just good enough to keep our 53 seats. He wants to expand it. He wants to get to 55. Now, why is that important? Well, let's go back to the One Big Beautiful Bill, which, again, I didn't bore you with why I think it's such a fantastic bill. It's an honor for me to vote for it. I think it's a generational bill. But it passed 50-50 with J.D. Vance breaking the tie. That's how close the margin. So we need bigger leads. So we need to have more Republican senators. And we have those opportunities. We've got Mike Rogers in Michigan. Now, Mike only lost by 0.3% last time around. He's already got more cash on hand now than he did in October of last year, right before the election. So he's raising money already. So we're putting ourselves in a good position there in Michigan. We just had the announcement of John Sununu running in New Hampshire with Jean Shaheen retiring. Again, the Sununu name, as you all know, is very, very well known in New Hampshire. That gives us a great opportunity there to be able to pick up a seat. And then in Georgia, John Ossoff is running. He's one term. We've got 3 good candidates there. Georgia is a state that we can pick up. So we've got 3 great pickup opportunities from the Democrats, as well as holding on to our incumbents. Now, I will say the Democrats, though, they are not just sitting back and waiting on us, right? They know that they've got to be more competitive. They know that their brand is actually pretty bad in a lot of Midwestern states, a lot of red states. They have a hard time. So what are they doing differently, right? So they're just not sitting back just trying to do the same old dumb stuff that keeps losing for them, right? They are trying to run different candidates. And that's what we saw last year in Nebraska. They're running an independent, last year they ran an independent, Dan Osborne, to try and fool the Nebraska voters into voting for somebody who is really a Democrat but can't win in a state like Nebraska with a D behind their name. Now, I'm going to take a step back just for a moment. If you go back like 25, 30 years, just about all of our statewide officials in Nebraska were Democrats. What happened? Well, the Democrat Party has moved so far left that they can't win in Nebraska anymore statewide if you've got a D behind your name. I myself, I originally ran for the Senate back in 2006. At that time, I found all my wife's or my mom's side of the family were Democrats. Now, actually, they've been voting Republican for years. They were either Roosevelt Democrats, in the case of my grandfather, my grandmother, or they were Kennedy Democrats in the case of my aunts and uncles. Once I said, well, I'm running as a Republican, they all re-registered because they've been voting that way already. Because the Democrats had already left them by that point. Right? That was 20 years ago. They just hadn't made the flip. Well, so now, the Democrats know that their brand stinks in places like Nebraska. So they're trying to fool people by running this independent. So Dan Osborne runs as this populist, hey, ran great commercials, almost seemed like he was going to support Trump even though he voted against Trump. Didn't say that before he voted against him, but he tried to hide everything he did. He was very smart. He ran a smart race. It was like 2 months long. Deb never really got a chance to define it. The press certainly never vetted him. They were in love with this idea of this like independent. And so he made it a very close race. But you know what else made it a close race? The Democrats spent nearly $38 million in Nebraska. Let me put it in perspective of, I ran a special election. Remember, I was appointed, had to run a special. I spent a little over 5. And he spent 38. We got outspent in Nebraska 2-1. That's one of the reasons why that race was so close. Deb won by about 6.5 points. It was about 60,000 votes. We had a lot of Trump voters who only show up in presidential elections. That helped a lot. Obviously, I'm not going to get the benefit of it in this cycle. and that's the guy who's now running against me. He raised a lot of that money on Act Blue. Oh, there's a shocker, using the Democrats' fundraising platform. When Dan Osborne announced he was running against me as an independent, the Nebraska Democrat Party endorsed him. When I called him a fake independent, the chair of the Nebraska Democrat Party defended him. Like, I should tell you everything you need to know. He's got all the same Democrat positions, right? He would have voted against the One Big Beautiful Bill. He would have voted to shut down government. So he's got all the same Democrat positions. He's just running as an independent, trying to fool me. And so that's the strategy the Democrats have come up with. One of the ways for them to try and be competitive and widen the battlefield so that they're playing in states that would normally be considered safe for Republicans, but are going to make us spend resources in places like Nebraska to be able to help win in states like North Carolina. So the Democrats, again, are not sitting back on their heels just waiting to see what happens. They're being very aggressive, and they're going on the attack. And it's not just Nebraska, right? There's an independent running against Jim Rich in Idaho. They've got independents running in other states too, like Iowa, Mississippi. So they are looking at red states and saying, well, maybe we can run an independent, and that way we can make somebody competitive against a Republican. So our job is to be able to make sure that we're exposing them for what they are. For example, because of the very short race and the $38 million, 40% of Republicans in Nebraska think this guy Dan Osborne is either conservative or moderate. So part of our job is just to expose him for who he is. So we actually started advertising in July. Normally in Nebraska, I probably wouldn't start advertising until next year. But we started on digital and started on radio. We got some TV up on cable for Nebraska football games. So we're not taking it for granted. We're going to work really hard. He did raise about $1 million last quarter. So he's already out there raising money. So we've got a tough race, and we need to be thoughtful that we cannot take for granted states where the Democrats are trying to run independents, that these could end up being battleground states as well, because the Democrats, again, are going to be aggressive to try to win. They know their brand is bad in a lot of these states, but they want to try and change the rules so they can be competitive. It's a very smart strategy. But they've tried it, we've got to expose them, and we can still beat them. And that's how we can, again, continue to make sure that we have our majority in the Senate and they actually expand our majority, which is Chairman Scott's goal.
Senator, thanks for the comments this morning. As a Chicago White Sox fan, congratulations
Hey,
to the Cubs.
this isn't our pre-call, you know?
Congratulations to the Cubs making the playoffs. I need to say that to you. So the Senate minority is keeping the Senate and the government closed. Can you give us any thoughts on when they're going to reopen? And do you think it'll have any impact on the elections?
Well, it certainly is a $64,000 question. I think Jim kind of alluded to it. Schumer wasn't going to allow him to do anything before today because he didn't want to appear to be capitulating and then reduce his voter turnout, like have people stay away because they're mad at the Democrats. So I think today does give an opportunity for Schumer to say something like, oh, look, we elected a Democrat in New Jersey, and the Republicans raised your insurance rates, and they're bad people, and SNAP benefits are in danger, so for the good of the country, we're going to open up government. So I could see him doing something like that this week. Everything in Washington takes longer than you think, so maybe it rolls into next week, but I could see them doing that. There just isn't really a whole lot of options for them. They found that it's easier to close government than open it back up again, right? For once, the House did the right thing. They sent us a clean CR. There are no partisan gimmicks in this thing. There's nothing to negotiate. And Schumer has done something that almost nobody else has been able to do. He's unified Senate Republicans. We are totally, remember, it's funny because you read in the paper, like some of them, that my Democrat colleagues have said, oh, we needed to do this to have leverage. Or the minority whip, Catherine Park, she said, I know families are suffering, but this is the only time we have leverage. What leverage do you think you have? Mm-hmm. You're the ones like government. we're trying to right-side, Biden hired 200,000 more people during his 4 years. We need to get government right-sized. I presume the administration is taking advantage of this time to do that. not one Republican voted for Obamacare or these pandemic subsidies. And remember, these aren't pandemic subsidies, and by the way, Democrats, you're the one who set the headline. Why do you think you have leverage on us? We don't like this stuff. Like, you know, some of my colleagues have expressed an interest in negotiating with the Democrats on some sort of, you know, runway down on the pandemic subsidies, and, you know, that remains to be seen. But even Chris Murphy has said in the past, there's a time and a place to negotiate healthcare, and it's not during a government shutdown. I wish that Democrat from Connecticut would remember that now, because that's exactly what the Democrats are trying to do. So I don't know why the Democrats think they've got leverage on us. I think at some point they've got to come to their senses and say, this is actually not a good thing to shut down government. And actually, if you're a fiscal conservative, you don't want government shut down either, because think about all the, we're going to go back and pay to people, you know, our federal workers, but they aren't doing any work, so they're not being productive, so it's actually more expensive for us. So as a fiscal conservative, you can't think this is a good thing. So I think the Democrats, at some point, have got to say that, you know, they made their point. Republicans are unified. They thought maybe the president was going to swoop in and try and do a deal here. He clearly is not. I think that they've got to take the opportunity that they've got this election. They should take this as like, okay, we got some wins. Insurance notices have gone out. Let's get the government open, and then we can start talking about some other stuff. Okay. So I do think it's going to be happening. I give it like 30% chance this week, 60% chance by next week.
Seems like everyone and their mother is running for Senate in Texas. What's your take?
Yeah.
What is my take on the Texas Senate race? I think our best, first of all, I've endorsed John Cornyn. I think our best chance to win that state is with John Cornyn. That could be a really expensive race if John Cornyn's not there. And I think that, again, if you don't have John Cornyn there, there's a good chance the Democrats can win that state. So I'm 100% behind Cornyn. I endorse him. I hope he wins the primary. And that's our best path to winning Texas and keeping that a lot less expensive. I mean, that could be $1 billion race. Texas is expensive.
Okay. Let's go to Ohio. Sherrod Brown coming back with, you know, the wind at his back. What do you think his chances are with that?
The voters already spoke. They said they did not want Sherrod Brown. The one thing Sherrod Brown's got going for him is that he's got name recognition. Two things, I guess. He's got name recognition and he can raise money. At the end of the day, though, John Husted actually had been out raising money when he was thinking he was going to be running for governor. So he's been around the state. He's actually been in Ohio a lot more than Sherrod Brown has. And if you haven't had a chance to meet John, oh my gosh, what a wonderful human being. John is really, really a great human being. We were so lucky to have him in the Senate. Again, it's going to be an expensive race because Ohio's expensive. I'm very confident that John's going to be able to beat Sherrod Brown. Again, the voters already spoke once. I don't think Sherrod doesn't have anything new to offer him, right? He's the same old liberal.